Hey everyone, Yukeen here. In this video we're going to be going over Kristian Advent. It is a 4-star Advent. Regarding the party info, there's not any particular characters that you absolutely have to bring into here. So like unlike Tayo Advent where you pretty much needed a Ruby for the double healing, and here you don't have to have a particular unit. Nyx is a good unit if you have her built up. She will do ridiculous amounts of damage in here. I have cleared it with a helper Nyx. My own Nyx is not quite built up just yet. Claude, you do need a tank in here. If you don't have Claude, Electra is an option. I've heard some people potentially clearing it with Cordelia. But generally, Electra is going to be a better tank in here, especially if you can manage your second round fight well enough. You don't really need a Claude, but some people have been running double Claude with 2 healers and a DPS. Others will generally run 1 tank. If you're going to be running 1 tank, I would recommend more Electra if you have her. Just because she's not going to be taking as much damage against Kristian himself. The general compositions that you want if you're going to be running without 2 tanks, you're going to want to run with a tanky DPS. In my case, that's going to be Tayo. I have his 3rd skill maxed for the 2 turns of 70% damage reduction. Let me find my team for this. Okay, I need to reset this team real quick. I run with Tayo lead, Ramu, just for the team-wide healing. Very good team heal as well on her 2nd, and then the 2 revives. And then I go with, if I'm running with a double Tayo, I would go with Electra in the middle, and then Karen. And then finally a helper Tayo, or just a helper DPS. This is generally what I'll run for like a faster team. If I'm going to be going a much slower team, I would recommend running like Tayo with Ramu. In this case I'm going to put Karen next to Tayo, and then Rue in the middle, and then finally Ramu next to Electra. The only reason being my Ramu is going to be tankier than my Karen, and Kristian does have an AoE attack, and I'm preferably going to want Electra to be tanking the hits from Kristian, and in this case you really want whoever's going to be taking hits from Kristian himself to be on the edge. The reason being for that AoE attack, if they're on the edge, he's only going to hit 2 characters instead of the 3. So this is my general like super safe run. Usually it runs about 20 minutes. And this first run we're going to be going over the general mechanics. So I'm not going to have it running on super fast. So let's just go in here with that. I also don't need followers for this particular team, since I have all the units I'm going to be running. So the first fight we're going to be doing is against Alec. Let's look at his buff. Inflicts additional damage to targets with decreased attack. It increases damage taken from elemental disadvantage while cursed. So he'll take increased damage while he's cursed from dark enemies. All the bosses in here, besides Damien at the very end, are light. And in this case, I'm going to just keep running through. He does extra damage to, again, to characters that have the reduced attack. Rue and Karen are going to be removing that just automatically, either at the start of their turn or the end of their turn. So I can just let this run on auto with this particular team, not really have to worry too much yet. Unfortunately for this video, I didn't have enough fodder to really get Tayo's first skill up. Otherwise, he'd be doing a lot more damage than this. I really maxed his third just for the higher 2-turn stun chance and the 2-turn damage reduction, which we'll be getting more into on the second round and the third round as to why I made those decisions. I believe it's about the once you get Alex to about half health, he's going to start rotating between normal attacks and then a team-wide nuke. And then at some points he does a small AoE. Again, as long as you don't have the attack reduction debuff on you, it's not going to do too much. It is a significant damage increase if you do have it up. So you want to avoid getting that on your DPS if at all possible. Electra should be able to tank it just fine. But yeah. King Dada just got first clear to Kane. Thank to my Saya. You're very welcome. Congrats on that Decane drop. And Aaron, also congrats on the your first Decane drop and clear. So here we're going to just let it continue running on auto. We can start going over the second fight, or the second round's mechanics. The second round you're going to be fighting Alfred, I think it's Alfred, and Cordelia. Cordelia in the fight is a light element. They're both light. And their main mechanic is when they get to 3 stacks of their buff, they have a stacking buff. If they have 3 stacks at the start of their turn, they'll use kind of a team-wide or an AoE nuke that has a high chance to stun and does a lot of damage. Cordelia's will hit a lot harder than Alfred's. So if at all possible, like if you have to make the choice between which one you're going to take the hit from, you definitely don't want it to be Cordelia's, especially if you're not running like triple healer. At least with triple healer, you have a more likelihood to kind of recover from that. When they do use their nuke, they'll drop all their stacks. To keep their stacks down, you essentially just attack them. Attacking them decreases their stacks. Both bosses have a high amount of multi-strike, and a decent amount of counter-strike. But we'll go more into detail once we actually get into that fight. And generally for healers, Ramu and Karen are kind of the best ones in here. Sid, if you have him. I don't have him, so I can't run him. Yeah, Sid's another really good option. Rue is good in here, especially if I'm just running like 1 DPS, because I can revive that DPS, get their cooldowns back up, and start doing damage again very quickly. You can totally run this without Tayo. It's just he's kind of one of those units that fits perfectly in here for that tanky DPS because of his third skill. And especially if you run him as a leader for that high counter strike from his passive. Kali's harder, Aaron. So here we can see they started out with 2 passives of their stack. And at the very beginning, they get 5 turns of Looming Death immunity. You can Looming Death these 2. It does make the run go much faster. So the Looming Death rune set is an option. Claude has Looming Death on his 3rd skill. Personally, I would find that unless you can reliably get it on both enemies, it's not something that I would highly recommend running if you're looking for a more stable team. Part of the reason being, and let's go into the passive real quick. Obtains Searing Rage stack when using skills, and it consumes it when attacked. So whenever she attacks, she gets stacks. Whenever we attack her, she loses them. Launches a powerful attack when there are 3 Searing stacks, or Searing Rage stacks. Attains 3 Searing Rage at the start of the turn if Alfred is killed. Alfred has essentially the exact same thing. Instead of Searing Rage, it's Spiritual Censors. So if one of the bosses is dead, the other kind of goes into an enrage mode, where they just always will have 3 stacks at the start of their turn and use their nuke. So you kind of want to balance your DPS while also making sure that their stacks stay below 3 for the start of their turn. Characters with high multi-strike are very good here, or high counter-strike are very good here, because as they're attacking, kind of you're getting those attacks back off on them. Here, Alfred has 3 stacks, so I want to drop him back down by attacking him. That dropped it from 3 to 2. And unfortunately, it looks like I don't have a revive back up yet to get Tayo. Electra is good here. Her 2nd skill and her 3rd skill can remove a stack from both enemies. And here I'm going to be using the heal on Rue, Karen's heal, primarily just to get that cooldown reduction from the heal so she can get a revive back off. And again, Cordelia has 2 stacks up, or 3 stacks up, so we want to make sure to get that back down to 2. Characters that have a high chance to stun are really good here as well, because the bosses do have a decent amount of counter-strike. So preventing them from counter-striking by stunning them is really good. And again, multi-strike's really good just because you cannot counter-strike from a multi-strike proc. Only the initial attack that you make can be countered. If it does look like one of them is going to get their nuke off, their 2nd skill off, you can always use Electra's 2nd, or like Claude's 3rd, or Cordelia's 2nd, to provide a team-wide immunity shield. You'll still get stunned, but at least you won't take the damage from it. And if you are falling behind on the stacks, that is a viable option for kind of just tanking those stacks and getting them back to 0 to make it more manageable. It is rather better to have like a controlled nuke going off with recovery options ready, just to kind of get yourself back on the right foot. And again, here we preferably want to get Cordelia down faster, and the reason being she's going to be doing more damage with her nukes than Alfred is. We do have a high chance to stun on Tayo's 3rd, so the general strategy is kill Cordelia, and then if I can, use Tayo's 3rd on Alfred to kind of stun him, or just to kill him if he's pretty low. Preferably you want to kill him around the same time, but if you can't, then applying some sort of stun or using Rue's 2nd skill for the status immunity is a good option to kind of make sure at least you can take some actions, because it is a high chance to stun. Both bosses do taunt. Cordelia has the AoE taunt, so she's more likely to kind of screw you over. In terms of like maybe Alfred has 3 stacks, but you can't attack him because the character that you have going before them doesn't have or is taunted. Rue's really good for that just because she'll remove taunt from the entire team at the end of her turn. Karen will remove it from one character at the start of her turn. Here both characters have a stack, both bosses. Her second skill has a chance to apply the burn. So it's about 40%, but if it does hit, it can remove a stack from them. Is there an easy way to farm advent essences? Just by farming advent dungeons, Sushi Monster. I generally do all the 4-star advents and 3-star advents every day. That nets me at least around 300 to 400 per day. If you farm the 1 and 2 stars, you can get also a decent amount. Cordelia does apply a shield to both, but usually Alfred's going immediately after Cordelia, so the shield doesn't really provide any use there. And there are times where like Cordelia is super low because again I'm focusing her more to kind of get her down. So that shield is actually a good time to attack her with the DPS unit just to get that stacks down if she's too high. So here we're mostly focusing Alfred down, making sure to keep his stacks manageable. Because we want to get them to about the same points. At this point it looks pretty safe to start killing Cordelia. Before I do so though, what I'm really going to want to do, we're going to attack Cordelia a little bit here. Rue's going next and then it's going to be Tayo, so I'm actually going to preemptively heal my Karen, my Rue, and my Tayo, so that my Tayo can kind of get that guaranteed not to be stunned from Alfred's nuke. So here, the 3 characters that I have with that status effect up, where they're immune to crowd control, did not get stunned, but my Ramu and my Electra did, and they were taking a decent amount of damage. So there, with Tayo not being stunned, he did proc his counter strike, and then we were able to proceed. At this point, I'm going to heal up a little bit, get Ramu's cleansed. And generally, at this point, you're kind of safe to go ham with Tayo. He's going to be ripping aggro off of Electra. And generally, actually, I would like Tayo to die about towards the end of the Kristian, like before I kill him the first time. Because I want his aggro to be as low as possible during the Damien portion of this fight. Generally with the Tayo with a large amount of counter strike, makes it very difficult for tanks to keep aggro unless they have a very high taunt chance. Mainly just because I build them with a decent amount of multi-strike. And then he's got another 20% from his counter strike from his leader skill. So he's going to be counter striking a lot, getting a lot of extra damage out. We can look at the damage meters at the end of this run, and you'll find that he ends up doing most, if not almost all the damage, like 5 times the amount of anyone else. Here we can just revive again, kind of go ham. We want to make sure, things to watch out for, we want to make sure his third is going to be up. for the start of the very next phase. And we want to make sure Electra's second skill is up for the start of the next phase. Generally, the way aggro works is if there's no tank, whoever is doing the most damage to the boss is the one who's typically going to be keeping aggro. If a character is killed, their aggro table drops, or that character is removed from the aggro table, they lose all the threat that they've built up. And then tanks generally have like a threat modifier, so they're more likely to get threat. And this is a good fight where you would run like a lot of Counter-Strike on your tanks, just so they can get more chances to apply taunts. But it looks like Electra has kind of established enough aggro where Taio's not going to really be ripping it off of her anytime soon, because he has died about at the midway point. So here we're going to just keep taking him lower and waiting on cooldowns. Taio's still got 2 turns left. In that case, it looks like he did do a lot of damage right there, so he might have ripped threat. Depending on how this goes, who he attacks next, I might start just defending and letting Electra kind of continue hitting him to establish aggro again. So it looks like she's fine. And we want to kill Kristian where at a point where Karen is very either like next or second, like first or second on your team to be going in the turn order. In this case, she's still not up there, so I'm going to just defend on Taio and not risk killing him too early. Karen, again, like, he's super low, but I don't want him to die at this point, so we're going to defend. This is a good point where we can attack and try and finish him off, or if anything, this would be perfect once Electra finishes him. So once you kill Kristian, the first thing he's going to do is he's going to summon Damien. Most of the time, Damien will do an attack immediately. He'll take his first turn immediately. His second turn is the one you want to watch out for. And the reason that I run with, I want Karen to be going next, is for her heal, her second skill on her heal. I forgot to mention that. So Taio's third, you want Karen second, and then Electra second, all off cooldown. So here, Damien's going next. It's his second time attacking. And like, you have to make sure to pay attention to see that he did in fact attack when he spawned. Her second skill makes it so that the healed ally's turn comes more quickly. In this case, it just happens immediately. Their turn happens next. So we're going to use this on Electra. And then we're going to use Electra's second skill for the team-wide damage immunity to all allies. And the reason being is Damien uses his big nuke here, and you want to prevent that from going off. It does a ridiculous amount of damage and can potentially cause a wipe at that point. It's not terrible if you're defending on most of your team, but again, it's not something that you really want to be happening, if at all possible. So that's why you want to run that that damage immunity, or even like with if you're using Deimos, maybe you don't have a Karen, you would want to kind of target that turn order so Deimos comes up soon before Damien's second attack, to provide the team-wide evasion buff. And then at this point, I want to establish aggro on Tayo against Damien. And the reason why I really run Tayo, his third skill, when maxed, provides a 85% chance to stun the target for 2 turns. Damien can be stunned. In fact, you really want to stun him as much as possible. And the reason being, well, first his passive, he's immune to Looming Death, Mental Seal, and Engraving of Destruction effects. But he's susceptible to all other effects. Damien's going to be rotating between doing a normal attack and then doing a very hard single target attack that has a high chance to stun. When he uses that heavy attack with the stun, he gets a stacking attack buff that just continues. It cannot be removed. So the faster you kill Damien, the better off you're going to be. If you get really unlucky, you don't get any stun procs, or you just don't have a character that's going to be stunning him, and you let the run or the fight go too long, Damien's going to start doing too much damage that you won't be able to keep up with the healing on. In this case, Tayo, he's kind of the perfect unit for this because of his third skill, the damage reduction. He's a water tanky attacker. Like, his base stats are pretty tanky for an attacker. He's water element, so he does have an elemental advantage against Damien, which is really great for this. And the general strategy here is I want everyone to be attacking Damien. We want to kill him as fast as possible. And one of the main reasons being is when Kristian revives and he then spawns or summons Damien, he gets a buff where he has resolve as long as Damien is alive. So he just can't be killed. So here, again, Electra is really going to just be, at this point, she's established more than enough aggro on Kristian, where he's just going to be attacking her. You can attack him with Rue. He does have a passive where he does more damage the more buffs he has, and throughout the fight he'll apply buffs to himself. Rue's first skill has a chance to remove buffs from the enemy. I believe Sid is also another healer that has a chance to remove buffs from the enemy, and Deimos also has a chance to remove buffs from the enemy. So if your tank's not that strong yet, you would want to focus them to kind of remove buffs if you can, just to reduce that damage income. So here, again, we're going to be attacking Damien with Tayo. He's going to be the one getting attacked. With his high counter-strike chance, he's going to be doing a lot of extra damage on him, which is definitely what we want. We saw in that turn right there, Kristian applied attack buffs to himself, and immediately afterwards he'll do his nuke. You kind of saw that. I have the animation skips going on, but he'll use his third skill on whoever he's aggroed to. In this case, it's Electra. And he does a significant amount of damage. My Electra at this point is 5-star enhanced. She's running around 20,600 health or so base, with about 5,000 defense, like 4,950 something, or 4,945 I think. So she's tanky enough where she can kind of take these hits just fine, as long as she gets a healing cooldown every once in a while. But the first time I cleared this, I had Tayo at 4-star enhance with Electra at 3-star enhance. Electra at that time did have some trouble taking hits, and in this case Tayo doesn't have his damage reduction buff up. So I definitely want to be using a healing cooldown on him, and Electra's relatively low, so we're fine using that healing cooldown to kind of keep everyone healthy. Kristian is going to be rotating again between normal attacks, buffing himself. As long as you watch out for that turn that he buffs, you can then immediately defend on your tank, as long as they get a turn before he goes again, so they can take some reduced damage from the boss during his nuke by defending. Do you know the frequency he uses the skill that attacks buffs? I believe it's just every other time he goes. It should be normal attack and then the stun, and then normal attack and then the stun attack. So like here, he's gotten one of those stun attacks off and it gave him the attack increase. But again, Taio's been doing a lot of damage to him and everyone's been focusing him. So there we go, he used his stun again. You really want to avoid something like that happening. So usually if your tank, again, especially if your tank's not enhanced enough or has good enough runes, you absolutely don't want them to be attacking Damien and get something like that taunt off, where then he uses his big stun attack. Usually if the turns match up and he uses that when Kristian's using his nuke, that is a potential chance for your tank to just die. And at that point you need to like immediately get them back up, because it's likely that they're then both going to be focusing your Taio, and then when you only have healers up and no revive, you're not going to be surviving much longer unless you can somehow get both of them back up and establish aggro again on the both of them. So here Taio's pretty low again, so we do want to heal if possible. Damien just did a normal attack, so what we can do is we can actually use Electra's second skill for the damage immunity. Okay, so I think it is Damien does 2 normal attacks and then the heavy attack. I have to pay attention to it. Usually my Taio's just fine kind of tanking the hits. He only has 1 turn left on his third skill, so I used his second for the attack bonus. And there's the Kristian nuke. We're going to heal Taio. And then Taio's going to go for his third skill again on Damien. That finished him off. At this point, I can just get Electra healthy again, and we can start autoing the rest of the fight. So here we'll try and pay attention to Kristian's attack. So he buffs. He's going to use his nuke the very next turn. So there's the nuke. Let's see what he does on his next turn. I believe it'll be his AoE attack, or it's going to be a normal attack. So he does a normal attack. The next one's going to be AoE, and then he's going to buff up, and then he's going to use his nuke again. Yeah, so there's the AoE. All of Kristian's damage is piercing on all of his skills, so unfortunately damage immunity shields don't really do anything for him. But they are useful for tanking Damien's attacks. And again, if you have like a Deimos or a Claude, you could always go with the evasion. Evasion does work against his heavy hits. So yeah, it looks like Kristian rotates between doing his nuke, then or he does a buff, nuke, then normal attack, then AoE attack, and kind of repeats that process. So he does a rotation of 4 skills. Again, the main important one you want to keep in mind is when he buffs, so you know that nuke's coming in. If your tank is low, you might want to heal them at that time, make sure they're healthy, or have them defend so they take less damage from that. But yeah. And that's Kristian. And then in the next run, we'll pay attention to Damien and make sure to see what his rotation is. I believe it's either going to be one attack and then the heavy attack, or two attacks and then the heavy attack. And in this case, we're going to be running with a different composition. We're going to drop Rue from the team. We're going to put Electra in the middle. I want to avoid having Electra next to one of my damage dealers because of the AoE attack that Kristian does. My healers aren't going to be taking hits from Damien, and the only time they're going to be taking a hit from Kristian is when he does the AoE attack. And again, Kristian goes through 4 skills in rotation, so by the time his AoE attack comes back up, hopefully your Karen and Ramu, or your healers, will have gotten back up to a safe amount of health by that time, that they'll be able to take that hit again. You really want to avoid having your Kristian tank next to your Damien tank to avoid having that extra damage go on your Damien tanker, and then causing like a death. I've had a couple times where, like, originally I was running when I was doing double Tayo, or Tayo with a DPS helper, and Electra was sitting next to Tayo. Originally I did that so then Tayo could get extra counter-strike procs, but it turned out that a couple times he was dying because of that extra damage that was going out. And I only have one character to revive, which is my Ramu on this team. She does have 2 revive, or she revives 2 people, but there are certain times where that might not work out. So we want to avoid having to rely on the revive if possible. It's more for that recovery when we need it. If you're looking for faster runs and you do have a decent team, and again, your healers don't have to be built up too much. My Ramu is only at 5-star enhance and really strong runes, just because I needed her strong for Tayo Advent. But like my Karen, I just got her to 60 before Kristian Advent came out. I started using her. Most of the time she doesn't die, so she's just fine. And in this case, my favorite team to run with is double Tayo. Let's make sure we're running with a Tayo that has a good amount of counter strike, preferably maxed on his 3rd skill and his 1st for more damage. That one's okay. This one doesn't have... This one... So if you have the 1st skill maxed on him, he's going to be doing a lot of damage, but he's also going to be ripping up a lot of aggro. And without a 3rd skill maxed, he's not going to have a lot of damage reduction turns. This one's got some decent stats, so we can run with this. No, that one's not bad. It's just you need more. Well, your multi-strike and counter-strike are fine, King Dada. Just get that 3rd skill up, please, when he comes back. So we're going to be running with double Tayo, with Karen and Ramu surrounding Electra. Was it this one? You need your stats are actually really good, but you need more enhance there. And you have his 3rd and his 1st max, so kudos. I just don't have the resources for that yet. So So here we can just kind of get that damage reduction out, go ham on them. And these runs are going to be a lot faster. Double Taio runs, especially with double Taio leaders, for that 40% increased counter strike, is really going to make these runs go faster. Like, we just did one rotation of skills, and the boss is already almost to half health. Here you are going to want to be careful on the attack reduction debuffs that Alec is going to put up, because once he starts using his nuke, it is going to be it will kill your Taios if they don't have the damage reduction buff up. So that Taio died. He did proc the Karen's revive. And Alex is going to be rotating between normal attacks. And then his nuke, I think. That's unfortunate. Taio went next. So it looks like he does 2 normal attacks, and then he'll do a nuke. In this case, we can get this other Taio to go again, which he didn't get a multi-strike off, unfortunately. But here's the nuke. It didn't kill him because he did have no debuff. Now at this point, you are going to want to be a little bit more careful on how you're running this. In this case, I want my Taio's first skills not maxed out, so he's going to be attacking Alfred more. I want the helper Taio to be kind of soloing Cordelia, because he's going to be doing a lot of damage to her. We do want to get him healthy again. And in this case, he does have his 3rd skill up, so we can go for that stun, just to make this a little bit easier. And when I can, I'm going to be going for that that stun on Alfred as well. Yeah, so Alec does 2 normal attacks and then the nuke. And again, we're going to try and stun them for those 2 turns from the Taios as much as possible. Alfred is a lot lower at this point because I've been hitting through Cordelia's shield during the Taio turns. So we're going to just kind of get her down. We absolutely don't want her 3rd skill going off when Alfred dies. We want to kill Cordelia first. Again, unfortunately, the damage isn't really working out as well as I would hope, because she's putting the shield up on Taio's turns. But you definitely want to be careful on how much damage is going to be going out. The Taios can put out surprising amounts. So once they get to these points, there is the potential on a big counter strike that you might end up killing one of them. Or a multi-strike, like right there. Unfortunately, we're really going to have to hope for a stun, or that we can kill this Cordelia. Fortunately, the helper Tayo did not get stunned and was able to proc a counter-strike to finish her off. But everyone else on the team was stunned besides Karen. And in this case, both my Tayos, generally when Kristian's getting relatively low, I want them both to die so they drop aggro off of him. But in this case, I'm going to be using the helper Tayo to kind of first establish aggro. Like, Tayos do ridiculous amounts of damage. This is all just from Tayo. 2 attacks. Yes, Zinjaline, I can in a little bit. I'm recording a video right now for Kristian Advent, but I can help you afterwards. This Tayo is doing way too much damage on counter strikes, so we might start having to defend. And we're not going to be using healing cooldowns on him. I want him to die. I don't want him to have aggro on Kristian. I want to be rotating heals, or I want to be rotating aggro between the helper Tayo and my Tayo, or rotating stuns on Damien once he's up. So we actually want both of the Tayos to die. And then we can use Ramuh's revive to get them back up. And then at that point, Electra should have a pretty healthy amount of aggro on him. We do have Karen's second and Electra's second. We do have Tayo's third. We're going to defend here. And there we died on Tayo. So the next thing I'm going to be doing, let's attack on Karen, get him a little bit lower, and also heal up. We're going to revive on Ramuh, get them both up. The helper Tayo does not have his third, but mine does, so we're going to actually rely on mine's first. And in this case, at this point, we want to establish a good turn order. So we want Karen to be in the next 2 slots. So here we have Electra and then Karen. We should be able to kill him just fine, because we should have Damien go after Karen. Damien's first attack did just go off, so we are safe to kind of go at him. And here, I don't want to stun him. I want his nuke to go off. So I'm going to be using Karen's second skill to heal Electra. So she goes next. She puts her shield up. So we tank that out. And now we can kind of continue. I am going to use Ramuh's heal here to kind of just make sure that Electra stays healthy. We're going to apply the attack buff to the team. And then Tayo's going to be going for the stun and damage. Unfortunately, the helper Tayo somehow got aggro back on Kristian. We want to make sure that that doesn't happen if possible. Here we're going to be using the helper Tayo stun. He does have aggro on Kristian, and in this case he's going to have 2-turn stun on Damien. So he hasn't really been able to get any of his big hits off. And he's already at about half health. The helper Tayo did die, so we're going to actually start using Karen's second skill on Ramuh to get her revive back up faster. So she's only going to have 2 more turns, and then she'll have her revive back up. And Ramu should be able to revive the Helper Tayo next. So now we have him back up. So we're going to just continue doing damage to Damien. My Tayos are kind of low, so I am going to put up that shield so they're not taking damage. And then whenever I get some heals off, or whenever I get a healing cooldown, I'll put that up. We can use this on this other Tayo, get him another turn. Kind of get that Damien close to dead. My Tayo did die, but Damien's very close to dying. So we should be able to finish him off soon. And there he goes. At this point, I can start using the heal on Ramu, get her revive back up, and then kind of finish this boss. If her revive's going to be getting back up by the time he's dead. Yeah, he should die before I can even get close, so I'm going to just continue attacking to finish it off. So here, it took about 12 minutes with double Tayo. And we can see with both of them, the Helper Tayo does have his first skill maxed out, so he's going to be doing a lot more than mine. Yeah, damage taken. And healing. Other options, I've managed to clear it with Tayo, Karen, Electra, Ramu, and Ashley. Tayo, Karen, Electra, Ramu, Nyx. I've even managed it with a Morrigan. And again, running with like a Claude is another option, especially if you don't have a Tayo. Maybe you have Ashley. You could totally run with a Claude or a Helper Electra. If you're on a budget and you don't have Electra or Claude, you could potentially run with a Cordelia, but you need to absolutely make sure then that whoever's tanking Damien will not die, because Damien will wreck Cordelia. And yeah, that is another viable DPS. Kristian is totally viable in here. He does have a damage immunity shield from his passive. That is a high chance to be applied, 60% chance whenever he's healed. So he's another really good option in here as a either just a DPS to run with a tank, or whichever. And that is how you clear Kristian admin.